Jacobs. Live. Welcome to Beer Maker Office Hours and happy Stout Month, everybody. For the first timers out there, Office Hours is where we, kind of the Beer Maker team, we deep dive into a subject to help you guys become better brewers, and then we basically just open things up for questions. But first things first, boys, what you drinking?
Chocolate Stout.
5 day.
5 day chocolate stout.
Thank you.
I'm also drinking the 5 day.
Are you the chocolate or are you the? Oh, you're the chocolate stout that we put the nibs in the grain, and it now tastes nothing like chocolate. It just tastes like a chocolate stout.
It doesn't taste a lot like that.
I'm drinking what Aaron called a suicide. This is like Jake and I were filming all these videos, and so it basically has every single 5 day edition in it at one time. So we got chocolate, hops, coconut, coffee, the whole nine. So it's pretty intense. All right, but today, like I said, it's Stout Month, and we're going to go into all things Stout. We launched a ton of exciting new stuff this month, only available this month. But we really wanted to jump in and kind of talk about the new 5 day kits, the new Imperial kit, and then talk about stouts in general. So first things, why Stout Month?
So the middle of the winter, it's a really good time to enjoy a warm, tasty beer like a stout. It's big, it's aggressive. It's a nice one to cuddle up next to a fire with.
Yeah, we got about a foot of snow.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone else has either been hit, getting hit, or on
Two curves.
just getting hit. Yeah, the other fun part about Stout Month is we took this as kind of an opportunity to show everyone how easy it is to customize their beers. So we launched a ton of new beers, all that have the ability to customize with oak, chocolate, coconut, coffee, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so what are we doing to celebrate Stout Month? Let's talk about the 5 day beers that we launched.
Yeah. So 5 day beers, they're really fun because they're done in 5 days. We're using a yeast from Norway called Quebec. We've had a number of other recipes use it. First one was our backyard session IPA last summer, and that was really fun, just to like get a quick session IPA going quickly. Then we did it with the pumpkin, and that was a really good experiment to see like how versatile can this yeast be. And now we're going full on with these stouts and doing 5 day stouts where we can try the different ingredients back to back. So we can do a coffee, we can do a chocolate, we can do an oat, we can do a coconut, we can do a breakfast stout or Valentine's, and just go back to back to back to back to back and get that that comparison.
Right. Yeah, so we launched 8. If you weren't paying attention, that was 8 full. I think you nailed all 8 of them too.
I'm surprised.
Hoppy stout. Most of them are single edition stouts, but then we also launched 2. So one is called Valentine's Day Stout that has cherry and chocolate, and then the breakfast stout has maple syrup, lactose plus coffee. And then that one we can talk about a little bit later, but throw some bacon in there. Who knows? Yeah, but the 5 day series is really fun because it's all about the adjuncts and the experimentation. Next beer that we launched was the Imperial.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Imperial for a sec.
So the Imperial is a gigantic beer. It is what you would hope an Imperial Stout to taste like, feel like, as big as it should be. It's a 10.5% beer. Clocks in at around, oh man, I can't remember the IBUs of it. Was it 90, 80? I don't know, there's a lot of IBUs. But that all those IBUs just stand there to balance out all of that big alcohol that we have in there. And if you have been following with how the system works, most of our beers come in at the max around 7 to 8%. And we're doing a bigger one.
Yeah, 10.5 or so. So those are the 2 big things that we're doing, is basically just launching a ton of stouts. And then throughout the month, we're just going to whip up as much stout related content, information, everything we can think of. So to kind of before we're going to deep dive in both to the 5-day series, how they work, when to do additions, also the Imperial, how to execute double match. But we're going to start at the beginning here and let's just talk about stouts. Like for those of us noobs to both brewing, like what is a stout? What makes a stout a stout?
So, what makes a stout, Brett?
It's dark.
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
noob here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm the one
So,
asking the questions.
so stouts came around a long time ago. Just they referred to just as big beers, essentially a stout porter or a stout amber, and they over time really became known as big porters,
Okay.
higher gravity porters. We're talking 1600s, 1700s, and then eventually they kind of morphed into their own style. And now stouts are these dark beers, and we don't refer to big, name your other style, as a stout.
When you say big,
Yeah.
in beer terms, what do you actually mean?
Alcohol.
So higher ABV is kind of how you. All right.
Yes. Yes.
And what exactly is giving a stout its very characteristic dark color?
Dark malts. Dark malts. So as you all know, your grains are malted barley. And before it gets into your beer, they go through a malting process where sprinkle water on them, dark, cool temperatures for about 2 days, and then they start sprouting, and that's where all those enzymes come to being. That's their diastatic power that gets generated during that initial malting, and then you put it through a kilning process, and then that further develops the flavors, dries the malt out. We call it malt now instead of just grains or barley, whatnot. So malt is actually a defined word. And then you kiln it, and you can kiln it lightly for things like 2-row, which is the base. So you can go, the lightest is Pilsen, which obviously is used to make Pilsners, and then you continue roasting it higher and higher and higher in terms of the temperatures and the length, and it gets darker and darker and darker and darker. And when you brew with those really darkly kilned grains, you get beers that look kind of like this.
So what percent of the grain bill is actually dark kilned grains?
Maybe 10%.
So it's still a really tiny amount,
Tiny,
but you get
yeah,
that type
tiny.
of result out of it.
You got it. I think our Chubby's a bit higher. This is based on our Chubby recipe. I think Chubby's in the 20s.
Okay.
And that's what gives it a lot of that aggression. But you really you get considerable dark beers that there's no way you can see through when you get about 10% of the bill.
Cool. Well, I think let's spend a bit of time on the 5-day series. This is the new one with Quebec. And just to note, all 9 of these beers that we're launching are only available this month. Good
8th. The 9th is the Imperial. Are we going
to... Okay. Well
good sidebar.
But there's a question in the chat that I thought it was a good one, was even if a kit's not available, are we going to have that recipe available to brew? And the answer is yes. It'll get cut from the store long before it gets cut from your app choice, and we're also trying to figure out some ways to kind of have those recipes live in perpetuity. But don't feel like you need to brew this in the month of February. You'll be able to brew this for a while. So let's see, 5-day series. First and foremost, 5-day stouts. What we talked about it a bit early on, but like, what defines a 5-day?
Yeah.
What is this black magic that allows us to brew in 5 days?
Yeah, so it's Quebec yeast is really the core of it, and the Quebec yeast strain, it does not produce a lot of flavor in general. It is just really, really fast. So we ferment at almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it produces just a lot of alcohol. Like, you're done. Like, it goes all the way through your sugar. It doesn't produce any more alcohol than another yeast, but it ferments through within a day, whereas most other yeasts take 4, 5, 6 days to finish the total amount of fermentable sugar in your batch. And what's neat about it is it doesn't produce any of the normal off flavors you would get if you are brewing at high temperatures or brewing, with that kind of speed.
And can this Quebec yeast be brewed on pretty much any type of beer?
No. Stylistically, no.
Okay.
So you cannot make this to create, let's call it a classic German Hefeweizen.
Okay.
It will not create the same flavor profile. Will it be beer? Yes. Will it taste great? Of course. But it won't be the same style.
So there are certain styles that kind of lend themselves to Quebec yeast that you can get what is maybe not a 100% pure representation of that style, but it's 95 and gosh darn it, it's fast.
Yeah, exactly. In particular styles that have, let's say, a lot of other things going on that are not yeast character dependent. So stouts, for one. We've got a lot of really fun additions. We have, all of the oak, the coconut, the cacao, the coffee, so like that's really what we're doing with this particular one. So Quebec's great for that. Also, hazy IPAs, phenomenal for Quebec yeast because you're there for the hops. And you're not there for that yeast specific flavor.
Is Quebec top or bottom fermenting?
Up top, baby.
Is everything we're doing top fermenting?
No.
So far?
Lagers are bottom.
Lagers are
speaking.
bottom. Okay.
Yep. Cabrona, Pilsner, Baltic Porter.
I saw some discussion in the bog, the beer maker owners, apologies, in the bog about someone was asking about the water profiles of our the Baltic Porter and the Sable Porter, and someone commented that the Baltic Porter is not really a porter; it's a lager disguised as a porter.
You got it.
What the hell does that mean?
That means
I'm just quoting.
No. So Baltic porters came around from a long time ago. They actually were the style of porter back in the 16, 17, 1800s. It was being transported across the Baltic Sea, and that style became popular in places in Eastern Europe that were accessible via boats, and the trade from England over to the Baltic states. They liked the porters, and they started brewing this darker style beer with the ingredients they had there and with the yeast that they had in those areas, which were cold fermenting yeasts. They were the lager style yeast, so they developed their own style of porter, the Baltic porter, that was a bottom fermenting yeast, very cold, crisp, clean, and the results are delicious. You should try the Ursa if you haven't.
Cool. So back to more Quebec 5-day focus. What we've launched 8 of these things, so every single one of them has different editions. Let's talk about when you're going to add what.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about the ones that have additions that go in during the first step, so the brewing step.
Yep.
I believe. Let's start with milk stout.
Yeah.
So how do you do milk stout? This is gonna be a really short answer.
Throw in lactose.
Yeah, so we're gonna provide you with a small pack of lactose, and you just drop that in with the grains. Like, it's that easy. The cherry goes in at brew step.
It does. You mix it up with your water. If you brewed the Festivus, same thing.
Same with also the maple syrup on the breakfast.
Yep, and just make sure you stir it up a little bit so it doesn't settle, but the maple syrup should be liquidy enough where it just
dissolves nicely. So outside of that, everything else is added in what we're referring to as the dry hop step. So if you're brewing an IPA, there's one more. All right, so then there's oak chips.
Yeah.
Let's talk about oak chips because this one's kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
We have you adding those to the brew bag.
Exactly. So, and the reason being, there are lots of little bugs in here. So, Brettanomyces famously lives in oak, and it's a type of wild yeast that creates these very dynamic fermentations. They're really good. They're essentially like wild, farmy. Any kind of Brettanomyces fermented sour, it's hard to describe, but you should go try some if you haven't tried any. But those bugs live in oak, So one of the best ways to get rid of said bugs is to sanitize it. So you put them through the pasteurization process inside the bag, and because beer maker doesn't get up to boiling temperatures, you're actually safe to put big chunks of wood in your batch without extracting so much tannin that you can't drink it, which would be the case if you were to boil that oak.
So a lot of the times, when people brew with oak, they're brewing in kind of like whiskey oak barrels.
Yep.
How can you achieve that same flavor in
Sure can. So the best way to go, just take these guys, soak them in some whiskey.
for about how long?
About a day or two. You
Okay.
want to get them saturated, and then drain the whiskey when you're done, and toss these into your brew bag before you do anything else. So like these go in first, put your Cervomyces in, screw your valves on, and then fill your machine with water.
Cool. So that's all of our brew step additions.
Yeah.
And these ones also, the oak, this is something you can easily add to a lot of different beers. I think I tried an oak wee heavy the other day. That was like, I'm not a big whiskey dude, but like I felt like I was drinking whiskey. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Also, side note, all of these additions are independently available in the extras portion of our store, both in the app and the website. So if you buy the 5-day chocolate stout, but you want to throw coconut in there too, you can just get coconut. Or if you happen to have some at home, you're welcome to do that. Just maybe look up the kit. We're going to put all the instructions, all these videos on our website on the Stout Month page, just if you kind of want to play around, because part of this whole thing is to encourage you to experiment a little bit more. So we kind of want to unlock this thing and let you guys play around. So that covers all of the brew step additions. Now everything else after that is dry hop step.
Yep.
That was really easy.
Yep.
And we're calling it a dry hop step just because that's that period after fermentation with IPAs. You normally add your dry hops. What's going on in the beer at that point?
So that's the point where the yeast have settled down and you have enough alcohol, pretty much you're done fermenting. So you have a relatively finished beer. With Quebec, it's done because there aren't any byproducts that need to get cleaned up if you were to go through the normal, let's call it a normal yeast strain that needs that rest period in order to clean its byproducts up. Quebec doesn't have any, it's done. So what's great about it, you can put all of these sensitive aromatic additions in, and the yeast in the CO2 production will not drive all of those flavors off and all those aromas off. So they stay inside, and the alcohol helps dissolve all of those fine flavors, those fine oils, into your beer. So the dry hop step, using quotes on that secondary fermentation step, that secondary addition step, you can call it, is the best place to do it.
Do you have to sanitize this stuff at that phase?
Depends on the stuff. You
Okay.
know, if you're doing oak, don't do that because it's got a bunch of bugs in it.
We're not doing that.
All right. So if you have coffee, cacao, you don't need to. You just toss them directly
So
in.
let's go through the list. We've got 5-day chocolate stout.
Yep.
So we've provided cacao nibs.
Yep.
These are both cacao nibs. One is roasted and one is unroasted. So actually, you can just stick them in your toaster oven for or your regular oven, for 3 to 5 minutes till they kind of get a little bit darker, and that makes them more roasted.
It does. If you can eat them, like just take a bite of it, and you can get that chocolate flavor out of it. You can tell roasted cacao tastes much more like chocolate than unroasted cacao. That said, the consideration with your beer is you've got a dark beer that has roasted elements in there already. So you can go lighter and still have the roasted element. You get the chocolate element with the cacao, or you can roast it, and then you're kind of doubling down on that roasted element.
And that goes, maybe less flavor notes, but coconut, you can do the exact same thing. If you feel like toasting it or something like that before you put it in. Both of these basically just, you'll get your notification for your dry hop step, open it up, toss them in. Simple as that. The one that's ever so slightly more complicated is the coffee stout.
Yes.
And in that one, we are recommending you make a cold brew beforehand, which is basically just And then, so yeah, concentrated cold brew with that. So just leave it in water, room temp for a day or two.
18 to 24 hours.
18 to 24 hours. You can do that in a French press. I think I even had luck pouring it in a glass and then pouring it through the brew basket when you finally add it. But that goes into the dry hop step as well. So same timing, just a little bit more work on the front end to remember to make that cold brew.
Yeah. And one of the unifying aspects of this is the pH of the thing you're adding. Coffee is a very low pH substance, so are the cacao, whereas the oak is not. So we would want to add the oak in at the beginning to do the kill step, whereas a lot of these other things like
All these acidic things.
exactly, like hops, crazy acidic, you don't have to worry about getting infections.
Matt, do you have something to add?
Can you add anything weird? Like, could you add like salt and pepper? Anything to these recipes?
Yeah, we could add a gosa. We can do a gosa stout. Put
What is
some-
it? What is a gosa stout?
Well,
Or what is a gosa?
yeah, it's a sour from a region in Germany that
Okay.
has their water table is just solidified. It's salty, so all of the beers that you brew there with their local water come out a little salty. So it's become this kind of special style where you get these sour beers that have a salty.
So you could technically salt any beer just
You just put
for
salt
fun.
in it. Yeah, it's
See what happens.
yeah.
Salted caramel.
Mm-hmm. That
Cool.
would be fun. Salted stout. That would be a meal.
Someone asked a question, and keep them coming, please, because we're running out of content already. It says the cherry concentrate volume is 5 ounces. Is 5 ounces an appropriate amount of concentrate to use for, like, if we were going to use other fruits?
Yeah.
Is 5 ounces kind of like a good
It depends
ballpark?
on the fruit.
Yeah, so I think the answer is totally depends.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say you're adding raspberries. If you're gonna add raspberries, the amount to add is about a pound, which is a lot more than 5 ounces.
Yes.
It's mathematically, that's correct.
Thrice, dare I say.
So, yeah, it all depends. The concentrate's concentrated for a reason, right? Whereas if you're using fruit, you've got a lot of fiber in there. There's a lot of water that doesn't have the flavor, but it's all mixed in. So the concentrate, it's more efficient.
On the concentrate on cherry in particular, it is truly a concentrate. It's got all the proteins, fibers, water stripped out. It's also a particularly tart fruit, so probably has more impact. So if anything, 5 ounces is probably on the low side of fruit additions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 5 days going to stick with not these specific 5-day recipes, but the general 5-day recipe.
Oh, you bet your ass they are, Matt.
So do you want to? So like this month, we want you guys to try out all these recipes. Obviously, like they're going to be around for as well. But you want to throw out like a competition with everybody to see if they can come up with a new type of 5-day stout that we didn't think of.
Yeah, no, we loved it. Yeah, stouts are these like really fun, interesting. It's a really good base, right? Like it's not super hop heavy. It's not super floral. It's not like it's kind of just like this really deep, nice base. So you can add anything. So
Oysters? Anybody? Oysters?
Jalapenos?
Yeah.
you can do anything, whether or not it is
You
drinkable
should.
and delicious
Yeah.
is a different question.
You just name everything you could put. So can you put?
So, and I can say that one of the things I've enjoyed playing with these in particular is messing with the bittering hops in it as well as the amount of dark grain that I'm putting in. So if you're going out and you're starting to play with the different levers of the stout composition, look at that bittering bit, and obviously you taste it. If you're familiar with chubby and you drink a chubby, you're like, wow, it's an aggressive beer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hop bitterness in it. It's an American stout for sure. There's a lot of dark grain. It's gripping. So pulling some of that back can allow some of those other flavors to come through as well. And it's fun. This is what's fun about it.
All right, we're gonna hit up a bunch of questions before we jump onto the Imperial. Oh, Matt, what do you got?
I was going to ask, how much can you change this recipe and it still be considered a stout? Like, what's the minimum of this for it to still be considered a stout?
That's tough. I would say, we're talking blurred lines here. Keep it above 30 SRM.
What the heck does that mean? Aaron?
Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, exactly. So
Keep it brown.
That's
If it's-
it. Pretty much it,
yeah.
right? You keep it brown, keep it dark, keep it. you know, and it's tough. You can't even really at this point even say keep it above X% alcohol. Like a Guinness Stout is 3.8.
Yeah. I'm gonna soapbox here for a second if it's cool with you guys, but like keeping it a stout to me means nothing. Like it doesn't matter. Like honestly, it's all to a certain extent as a non like traditional home brewer, like it's all beer, and so this is all it's it's a spectrum, right? Beer style is a spectrum, so you might as well just go ahead and mess around. And if you start tapping away on the dark grains and you find something that's really delicious, like just go for it. I think that's kind of one of the fun tenets of beer makers. You can do whatever you want, and like beer is going to come out of this machine. And whether or not it's delicious, that's kind of up to what you put in and what you kind of mess around with it. But like, we totally encourage all that level of experimentation. Here's some questions real quick. Not from Stephen Oliver. He just wants to see us eat oat. We told you there were bugs in there.
They tried it. They ate a little bit.
So someone asked, this is an interesting question. So someone asked, would they get the same results with hops if they put them in their waste bag in order to attempt to gum things up? And I'll even preempt that question that there's multiple, it's hard to, you can put in the hops so many different periods, right? There's brew step, there's pitch yeast, and there's dry hop. So like that already kind of confuses the question and it's going to direct the answer here. But talk about what would happen if you put hops during your brew step while everything was dry into your waste bag.
Yeah. So what you'll be creating some isomerized alpha acids,
Okay.
which is great. So the best way to do this is with raw hops, like pelletized, non-steam hops. You put them in, you get a lot of the aromatics out of it, and then you also get a conversion of alpha acid into isoalpha acid. So it creates bitter. It's absolute. All right. So my favorite thing to do with the future IPA is to take the first set of yeast hop additions and just throw them into the waste bag and brew it like that, because that gives me a lot of all of the same flavor, a lot of the aromatics, but you get more bitterness out of it.
Because the future IPA uses mostly raw hops.
Only raw hops.
Only raw hops.
Yeah.
And with our other beers, we use steam hops, which have already been through that isomerization process.
That's correct.
So, to answer your question, if you put raw hops in, you'll isomerize them, and they'll go from what may have been a more floral, lighter, fruity flavor, and they may turn a little more bitter, which is usually not a bad thing. Executing that in future steps is really complicated and really sloppy and kind of disgusting. This is also a nice opportunity to plug the hop filter.
Yeah.
So we launched the hop filter. It's a tiny screen that you put in your brew tub. No, they're stacked somewhere else.
I have one in my car. I can go run.
No, they're in here somewhere. It's a tiny filter that you put at the bottom of your brew tub, so you can hop the bejesus out of your beer and not plug up either one of your valves.
There we go.
Check it out. So that's all I'm saying. But yeah, so this is kind of, we wanted to launch this because we have a couple, no spoilers, but like super hop heavy beers coming down the pipeline. After Stout Month, obviously we're gonna switch things up a bit. But yeah, this is also another good way to hop to your heart's content without plugging things up.
It does not hurt to use it in our current beers as well.
Oh yeah, I just use it on all beers now.
No, it's great. It just keeps all of the floaters out of your bag.
And keeps your beer tap from getting clogged with residuals.
It's a big deal. Real big deal.
This is going to be just a shot in the dark ballpark question. How many ounces of aseptic strawberry puree at dry hop stage would you recommend?
Probably go for at least 6.
6 and
We could push it to 7.
7 and a quarter?
Let's keep it at 7.
Okay. Keep stalling on that. Kelly, a question.
Yeah. So all right. So the puree thing is interesting. You could go high on that stuff too. You can get up. And the nice thing about the aseptic purees is they are obviously aseptic, and they come in these big pouches. They've already gone through a boiling process or pasteurization process to them. So when you open them up, you can just dump them directly into your brew tub, and you can do depending on your goals of this stuff, you can put them in as a secondary, and it will produce more fruit forward, less alcohol. In particular, if you put it in towards the end of your rest, and then you allow the machine to then pull all the heat out of it, and then fermentation stops, and now you have a cold, slightly sweet beer.
So
Interesting.
you want to do it at that point because the yeast are mostly done if you want the sweeter.
Exactly.
It's sort of like with the ciders because the fructose gets used up from the
Yeah.
alcohol. And that's
Exactly.
That's why the ciders are really dry until you
Yeah.
back sweeten.
Exactly. So this is a way to back sweeten, but also get a little fermentation out of it. Or you can do it earlier, and you can get a lot more of that secondary fermentation. And very interestingly, if you're using the Philly sour yeast, by putting an aseptic fruit puree in at the end of it, you'll produce more alcohol. Whereas if you put it in at the beginning, you'll actually be able to drop the pH and produce more souring. That's just how the yeast work. They are front loaded on souring, and then they're back loaded on ethanol production.
Honey Stout, Bruce. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
totally, man.
Would a honey stout be a back sweeten, or is that something?
That's up to you. So honey stout, you can either do on the front end where you mix it in with your water, like we did on the Festivus, and breakfast is syrup, but same deal, right? You mix it in with the water,
Also,
and that's just
people make meads and braggots that same way.
okay. I remember I got like a long talking to about from a man who made meads at the last beer fest we went to in Denver. So I'm afraid of meads in general. Matt Thompson, sorry, said 5-day candy bar series, and it's brilliant.
Yes. Oh my god.
Because also, like, I mean,
What?
he said chocolate coconut, and you're like, yeah, that's a Mounds bar. But then it's
Yeah.
like throw peanut butter into there. Peanut butter stouts are absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Peanut butter stouts.
So excited.
I can tell. What how if you wanted to slop a gob of peanut butter in your brew, when and how and where?
Dehydrated, defatted peanuts are the best.
Dehydrated. I'm just repeating this
Yeah.
for everybody. Dehydrated, defatted peanut
is-
butter.
Defatted is the
Peanuts.
most important.
So you want like
piece.
basically like peanut flour.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, peanut flour without the fats. Depends on how you produce flour.
My questions would be smooth or chunky, so I guess.
Yes. Justin's. Do I go fancy
So
or?
the PB Fit, it's one of these like peanut butter
Yes.
protein shake things. That stuff is awesome because you have all the protein and you have the peanut flavoring, but you don't have any of the fats. So the reason you don't want fat in there is because it will completely deaden your head and will make the beer a little not.
And that goes for fats in general.
Yeah.
So if you were to try to have a little too much fun with your breakfast stout, fry up some bacon, and put that in the brew basket.
Keep it to the minimal. In particular, if you're going to do that, put it in your
Just
grain basket. because-
Dab it off.
Yeah, definitely do a dab on it. But if you put it in your grain basket, you'll be able to allow those grains to kind of sop up that extra fat. These are just basic tactics to deal with fat. In general, you don't want to have a lot of fat in your beer.
Yeah, early on we saw a lot of people doing some pretty wacky stuff, putting in like big old gobs of Nutella and stuff, and unfortunately for all of us eating Nutella, that's like 75% palm oil and fat and things like that, and just a smidge of taste. So yeah, avoid those. Go heavy on the thing that is deriving the flavor, or that the flavor is derived from, in general.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a rule of thumb.
You were saying that thing about fat, and you were all saying breakfast out, maybe put bacon in. Is it better to use turkey bacon or regular bacon?
Oh, regular.
I mean,
Well, I bet a regular bacon's got all sorts of nice like flavor injections, and so maybe that actually might impart more flavor if the fat when we eat it is the good part, but with turkey bacon it's just like this.
It's just like flabby nitrates.
Yeah, but like tasty nitrate.
Yeah.
All right. There's gonna be a couple more questions, but I just want to quickly hit Imperial IPAs and the double mash. So the double mash is a new thing that we're launching. It's a new process. What is that?
So, it's exactly what it sounds like.
Great question. I'm a journalist.
You mash twice. So so if you like, most of our beers come out in that 7-8% range at the maximum when you pack out that brew tub, and the reason is because we only have so much space in the brew tub, and if you were to go through the full brew and then
I'm just
pull
pouring.
the grains out after they've already gotten all of their starches converted and dissolved into sugars, and then put more malt in. That's what a double mash is. So you essentially say, I'm gonna fill the machine up, start your brew like normal, grains in, hit go, and then 9 hours later, you've got essentially the mash that's done. You can then pull that grain out and put new grain in and continue mashing and get even more sugar, which then equals more alcohol.
So you're just saturating the hell out of that wort.
You betcha.
And the way we have it set up in the instructions right now is you go through your very, very normal brew process that you've done hopefully hundreds of times. You're gonna and this is the one thing to keep in note, that we're gonna keep the squeeze bar in, keep all that hot water up in the brew tub, remove the grains, drain them for a while, and that's kind of like, it's hot. It's not like you're gonna burn yourself hot, but it's
like hot plastic. It's like
yeah. So you want to drain it, and then you're also gonna add some more water because you're taking out a lot of that water with those grains. So that's a double mash, because then you're just gonna really maximize the amount of sugars in that wort. Yeast are going to go wild, and you're going to have yourself a 10 to 11% ABV beer.
Yep.
You guys want to?
I'd say the one consideration, or do you want to take some questions?
No, stall.
All right. The one consideration, I've done a bunch of double mash beers. The biggest thing is timing, because you want to be around when you're changing from your first mash to your second mash. So normally with Beer Maker, you could just like throw your malts in and then hit go, and then leave for as long as you want. You come back at some point later, and you're like, oh cool, it's time to pitch yeast, right? But this is different because you need to be there to change over.
Yeah, this is slightly more labor intensive because you've got like multi steps leading into that fermentation before you kind of set it and forget it. So just worded wise, this might be a Saturday brew, or if you're working from home, it could be a Tuesday brew.
Right, or let's say 9 in the morning. If you start at 9 a.m., you're going to be switching over at 6 o'clock in the evening. And then if you do it right before bed, let's say I go to bed at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be switching over my brew 7 o'clock the next morning. So it's pretty easy if you just start it at one of those spots. The worst time to start is probably like 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be switching it over by 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning.
We don't judge schedules, period, right? So the question is just check out the calendar. It's going to have a little bit more action those first 12 to 18 hours. So just, if you're up all night because you got whatever, or you have a 4-month-old, go for it. Whatever. But look at the schedule, give it a try. All right, questions. The homie Christian Chandler, always gold medal Olympian. He also made a suggestion. It's like, as you're playing around with these 5 days, and the 5 days is a really good way to illustrate what he's saying. It's kind of like Christian took a really scientific approach as he starts to tweak beers. He makes small changes, iterate. And I think with the 5 days, suddenly you can, because the turnaround is so fast, you can make incredibly small iterations, taste them side by side, and try. Anyway, that wasn't really a question. That was just.
And for sure. And I want to point out, so Christian's beer, which is the Sable Porter.
Sable Porter.
If you haven't tried it, you've got to try it. I would go out on a limb, not even on a limb, to say it's the best beer on the system. It
was definitely the best beer of 2021. One?
Yes.
One.
Yeah. So
in the world.
So Christian has a long rest period in that beer. And that's to allow those dark malts to really mature and to merge together. And by allowing it that full month and a half timeline to become this new product, it changes, right? What we're doing with the 5-day, we have a lot of those dark grains, but we're going fast on them.
Right.
And so we're solving the yeast side of it, but still the dark grains, they have a lot of time to evolve still. So these beers that we're drinking now, they're going to be very different beers, 4 weeks from now. And it's one of these things where if you have a bottling wand or something, throw some in some bottles, throw some in some growlers, and hang on.
This is a general shout out to just, you don't necessarily need to take your beer bag directly from your beer maker into a tap. You can leave it in the fridge. Yeah. You can, and let it condition there. You can transfer to, we got some U kegs over there. You can carbonate in U keg. You can actually, I bottled a bunch of stuff. I bottled a future IPA just to let it sit there and see what it looks like. So once you're done brewing and fermenting in your beer maker, you have a lot of options of what you do next. So go for it. We're working on providing more and more solutions, so you're not completely on your own there. But for those of you who are already well versed in this world, you're already kegging. So have at it. Logistical question from Prime Passages, which seems like a bit of a sleeper here. Any chance of getting your supplies and maker kits onto Amazon Prime? I see you, Prime.
We've been there, and we're just
no. So she's basically asking can you put your hop screens on there?
All of that
stuff.
Yeah.
But can we put more extras? It's a good question. Amazon takes our money, so that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Full transparency, 15%.
Yeah. And then there's the inbound, and then their shipping costs. So I mean, it really becomes one of these things where it's you take anything that you see on the beer maker store, either web or app, add $10 to it, and that's the price it's going to be on Amazon.
Yeah. So small business plug here. Amazon is a necessary evil. But at the same time, they take 50% on everything they do. We have to ship it to them, so there's a lot of costs involved in that. If you want the most efficient shipping pricing on our website, you basically just have to crack that free shipping threshold. So 4 kits and a hop screen, or 3 kits and a hop screen and a T-shirt. Yeah. That's kind of where we're stuck. But unfortunately, we live in this world of direct-to-consumer shipment, and Amazon dominates, and we'll get there.
Yeah, eventually.
They do also sometimes destroy our stuff, and then that's just our problem.
Yeah, that's
happening.
We got a lot of questions. Hell yeah.
They ran over one machine with a forklift, as far as I could guess. That was fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then we had a bunch of multi-packs in Canada that they just opened the multi-packs and then tagged the individual kits inside of it as the multi-pack.
All right, enough poo-pooing on Amazon.
Sorry.
We gotta keep moving. We got a million questions. This is great. Any chance of getting the beer maker modeled into the recipe builder of Brewer's Friend or some other thing?
Yeah, so I've talked to Brewfather, I've talked to Beersmith, and the challenge is that they don't know how to deal with our system. Because we only use a very small sliver of regular brewing equipment. But that said, the desire is to take recipes from Brewfather, from Brewer's Friend, from Beersmith, and then just say let's convert them to beer maker recipes, and then take your beer maker recipes, scale them up to your bigger equipment. So
working on it,
actively working on it.
Yeah, and the thing is the more we get, the more kind of market power we get. They'll start making these fun little 12-pack, get 1 gallon recipes, and so it's a matter of time. But we're talking to them. They're all nice. We're all nice dudes.
They're super cool.
This is a great question. Since I'm brewing a buttload of beers in just 5 days, you got any extra white valves? Matt?
We have a limited supply of white valves still. If you want them, you can email me and I can invoice you for them. I have to do it that way so I can limit them because we have a very limited supply.
What's the best way to email you, Matt?
support@beermaker.com.
Sorry. China logistics. You ever heard of it? I'm working on it.
My next order for them will be an extra like 1,000 or 2,000 each. So
We'll have plenty.
lots,
And
plenty.
like, let's call it by this
Oh, I like
coming
this.
summer.
I like
we're
this
gonna have
question.
Lots.
This is on the double mash point prime, so maybe not a Amazon mole here, but they said, is there a limit to how many mash repetitions you can do? Would repeating it 10 times give you maple syrup? I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, so there comes a point where with extra sugar or extra starches in there, you get lesser and lesser and lesser and lesser efficiencies. So there becomes a time where it just doesn't make any sense. Like if you want to go crazy on your alcohol, well, one, yeast will only ferment up to 12, 13, 14%.
That's a great ceiling.
Yeah, it's a
So
great.
like, even if you filled your machine with maple syrup,
they'll only.
they can
make
only
it-
ferment so much.
It'll be a very sweet, very alcoholic.
Sludge.
Yes.
This is a great, slightly off-topic question. Is there any way, because we just happened to talk about this earlier today, is there any way to force my vibratory motor on?
If you press the button.
So is all right.
That's not forcing.
And I
that's-
don't even know the answer to this question because we recently instituted like a clarification step where you can go ahead and press your button and it'll run for about 5 minutes. Does that same concept apply to fermentation?
So any step where it can vibrate, other than the transfer step, if you press the button and you're not in your quiet time, it'll start to vibrate.
So if your machine's light is pulsing,
If your lights machine is
meaning it's not waiting for some next step. If it's pulsing during fermentation, rest, primary, whatever, clarification, you can press it. And what we were talking about earlier is basically giving you a little bit more controls on the vibe motor. And then always a plug for the old tickle here is get in there and open your machine and poke that sucker. Like I can't keep my hands off these bad boys. But yeah, no. Like the vibe motor does a lot, but also like make sure to work. These are all the moves I do. I work the sides, I tickle the bottom, and I poke the nose.
Yeah, I like flicking. I'll flick it on.
Big.
Like it's like first thing in the morning. I open up, I go flap, 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 and then I press the button, and then I make my coffee.
Great question, and only a mediocre answer, I'd say. With the double mash brews, do the recipes tell you in advance how many hours until the second mash?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. Because it depends on the temperature of the water that goes in and the temperature of your room, and so like there's some variation.
probably have a couple hour variation.
Yeah, 1 to 2 hours.
Well, right, yeah, at most.
I just don't want to get yelled at for my garbage instructions. I'm just
Yeah.
covering my ass.
Yeah, so you can generally expect it to be about right. Like I did it this morning and it was within 20 minutes.
So if you're putting in like room temp water
Mhm.
to first pull, what's that? 6 to 8 hours? No, 4 to 5 hours.
About 9.5 hours.
From room temp to you hit your mash temp and you hold it for
2.5 hours.
all right. So from start to finish,
9.5 hours.
9.5 hours.
But that said, I did it this morning at about that, and I was using negative 10 degree Boulder, Colorado tap water.
So for these for these imperial, is there any downside to using hot water?
No.
Boiling water, dare I say, if you're trying to condense that whole process,
Right, so that's
which I've done a lot of times.
that is a great question. And if you wanted to speed things up, I would highly recommend you go to the DIY section, download the recipe spreadsheet, and there's a strike temperature, a strike mash temperature
Oh my god.
function. Right, so you're asked about boiling.
Can I just put hot water in my machine?
Yes, you can put hot water, but if you want to just like nail it, right? So you put it in, and then you
Well,
you
sure.
mash it,
It's
right?
more just like I just don't want to stay up all night.
Yeah, no, you can do that too.
Wow.
Yeah, but what I would recommend is 165 degrees. If you heat your water to 165, you put it in, you put your grains in, you're gonna be golden.
I would not recommend
Boiling.
Don't boil. 165 is about the max I would ever recommend you do.
So what I've done,
Mhm.
and this might not be right, but with these machines behind you, I'll put in as hot as my faucet goes, first batch of water, put in my grains, and then I'll have a pot boiling. Not boiling, but just like heating up, and I'll go through the grains so it'll cool it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Ill-advised, but
It's ill-advised too, because if you're hitting it with that hot of a temperature,
Yeah.
you can actually deactivate various enzymes
Damn
in
it.
your grain.
all right.
Right. So you don't want to go too high, and that's the point here. Right?
Okay.
So you want to get it just enough so you're not scorching all your enzymes,
But
you're
you're totally
balancing.
welcome to heat your water up. Maybe not
Absolutely.
boiling, but heat it up, speed things up, especially if we're going for a double mash day.
in particular, use a spreadsheet, use a strike mash calculator, and then send an email to support a beer maker. I'll get it, and I'll help you.
One thing to take a note of, just be careful, depending on your hot water system at your house or apartment or whatever, you may just want to be starting with the cold water because sometimes the hot water heaters have additional stuff that comes out of them that could affect the beer, or they could just not be very sanitary water. And that's
We're
depending
still
on your
going
location.
through
You are,
pasteurization.
but I mean, the water chemistry matters a lot for the beer.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
you could mess it up if like
You
the water
get extra
heater has some
calcium.
stuff
You
in
could
it.
do
Fair
some-
enough.
Yeah.
Is there? I'm gonna just quick answer this one, Bruce. Is there a way that we can add time to the fermentation or rest steps? Kind of. We're working on it.
We're working on it. We actually had a meeting about this
Yeah,
earlier
like
today.
this was the
about-
DIY meeting you're learning about this morning.
Yeah, about extending times. If you need to add some extra time to it, send us an email. We can back your recipe up.
Use math the best ever. Oh yeah. Next question. Come on, Matt fanboys, fuck off. Dismissible. Craig, yes, Christian's Sigma Porter is in fact awesome.
Yeah.
Have you nitroed in a U-keg? No, we have not nitroed in a U-keg.
One note about the beer tap, actually, I don't think you can use nitro in it if you wanted to try. The regulator isn't rated for it.
Don't nitro your U-keg.
Well,
Or no, your
beer
tap.
tap.
Sorry.
I have no clue.
U-keg. I don't know. We haven't tried it yet, but we've been having a very casual conversation with U-keg, so we may try to figure something out soon. Oh, this is a great question. My white, because this happened to me too. My white valves leak sometimes when I put my beer in the fridge just in the bag. Would putting gray valves on them stop it?
That would have them flow beer. Beer would flow out.
No.
But one
I mean,
thing you can
John, I
do,
feel like you've probably tried that.
but one thing you can do, and if I had a bag with a valve, I could show you. If you look at the back of the bag behind the white valve and take something like a pencil, something dull, like an unsharpened pencil or an unpopped pen, and you push the back of the center post of the white valve from behind, it causes it to seal more, and if it is leaking at all in that stage, which is usually because something's clogged in there. No, just
white valve. Basically, it just means like some flake of hop or something is blocking that sealed.
So what you want to do is you want to have, so this is on the front of the bag, you turn the bag around and you see this little area right here. You take something that's like dull and you just get in there and just push that down. And usually what's happened is wasn't able to fully overcome whatever it was that was trapped in there. And doing that gets it fully seated and it should seal. 99% of the time that will solve any sort of small leaks you have when it's not in the beer tap or whatever.
Is it possible to put a larger CO2 cartridge on with an adapter for better pouring pressure?
Not with these regulators.
It's like double everything.
Yeah, the problem is that connecting the two, you don't have enough space to screw a bigger one in. And
Well, they said with an adapter, so now we're already screwing in something weird into the thing.
If you could come up with some sort of right angle adapter that has the right thread and seals well against the O-ring.
that's entirely made of metal.
Theoretically, yeah.
It has to withstand over 800 psi, whatever.
Sharon,
this
if you
adapter
do,
is.
let us know.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah.
I know there are some people that have done a modification to the beer top with an off-the-shelf with an off-the-shelf regulator. That is also an option, and I mean you can also take the regulator out and reroute the tubing if you want to do some stuff like that. Because it is a bit difficult to get your fingers in there and get everything screwed in quite right there. Those are possibilities. If you do the regulator mod, be very careful and make sure you use lots of thread tape because it's very easy to get something to just be leaking a little bit and lose your cartridge.
We understand.
Yes, we have
Tiny leaks.
Tiny leaks over any large period of time.
AJ McManus, are you planning on testing sours? Bet your ass we are.
Yes.
That's easy answer. Next. No, you guys are the best. Thanks. Is there any way? This is live. Is there any way to see the imperial recipe outside of the app? Can I look at the recipe while a beer is brewing in the machine?
So
basically, he wants to access all of the recipe information whilst another recipe is brewing. So he can't go like start a recipe or So
I see.
Good question. Yes, but we're behind actually because we have all of the instructions somewhere. When I made all those HTML files, for Christ's sakes, and I don't know if they ever got uploaded. Short answer is
They should.
you might not have the exact like recipe fundamental times and temps, that kind of thing, but from an instructional standpoint, we will have all that. And at best, we're behind. At worst, we don't know what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, we've sort of lost track of that. But yeah, those can be in there. Although there is a really easy way to do it, and that's just like a beer maker. You get one that's just using the book of recipes.
Nice. Nice plug, Matt.
Yeah, just buy a separate one just to
Just to look at
Hell,
this.
yeah. Someone said they love the kits that come with the machines, Jake.
The recipe cards, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I saw
Shout
that.
out to the homie Jake
That blew my
making
mind.
recipe cards.
Nice,
He
Jake.
hates those things.
Yeah.
He just made 9 of them.
They're horrendous.
Yeah. Now who is the engineer?
Who?
Now we. Oh no. Oh, it's because Matt's been talking. Yeah. Bunch of nerds. Let's see. I successfully stopped. Oh, plug that son of a gun. Sorry, we're normally not in the office. Oh yeah, check that out. So that machine just buzzed because it's late, and Aaron pushed the button and it shut up.
Yep.
So
Silence.
you have that ability.
Do that while I'm watching movies all the time.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and say last call for questions because it's kind of this was a long one. I thought we had nothing to talk about today, but y'all are all fired up in the chat. So let's see if there's any unanswered questions real quick. Does anyone have anything to talk about in the meantime?
These don't taste like sweet chocolate.
No. Well, no, I think
They
that's-
were very disappointing.
They're very bitter.
No, I think that's a really good point about these ingredients. So when you are thinking about the ingredient, like you think chocolate, right? You're going to put cacao to get the chocolate flavor. You're not going to put a candy bar in because it has the fat and the sugar. When you put something like that in, or let's say raspberries, blueberries, any of these other additions that have the sugar, that sugar is going to ferment out. And it's going to be gone. You're going to get a very dry flavor with that fruit as well. So dry plus fruit, not really palatable. So you have to think about how the recipe composition is and add some additional non-fermentable sugars, which usually in terms of beer brewing come in the form of caramel malts. So add more caramel malt to it and then your fruits, and you're going to have a really nice sweet finishing flavored beer. What else we got?
Nothing. Well, someone asked, is there a good way to make Brewfather equipment profile? And I think it just goes back to like, they're kind of like, we're working on it. There's a lot of, yeah.
I thought I saw somebody do that. I thought I saw one.
There is one. I made one on
Yeah.
my Brewfather account, but it's whether or not we actually put it.
Chick's mom asked a really good question just now.
Jake's mom? Hey, Jake.
Yeah, no, she asked, I made a Dunkel and it wasn't carbonated enough. Should I add the second cartridge?
Jake, do you want to
And so-
answer the question?
Yeah, Jake, come say hi to your
Come
mom.
on. Come on.
So basically, if your beer is undercarbonated, it probably means it's not totally activated. But adding a second cartridge right after you add your first won't actually increase the carbonation because beer can only absorb so
Well,
much.
what I think is really interesting about this, we actually had so Vineet. I don't know if Vineet's on this call, but Vineet was going. He was doing exactly this. He was going first cartridge, and then he was putting second cartridge in. But what was interesting about Vineet's setup is he actually altered it. So his draft line length was 3 to 4 feet because he was plugging it into his kegerator. And what that additional length did was allow for the foam to reduce because he had the right draft calculations. And the additional pressure that was formed by that second cartridge being entered was actually over-carbonating
So he's
his beer.
over-carbonating his beer, but compensating through a tap hose length.
So he didn't over-foam. So the result was beers that were just crazy bitter initially because that's what carbonic acid does. You get these overly bitter results and then you drink it. Like I've had some, like I actually bottled some wheat, some of our ghost wheat, and over-carbonated it.
I'm about to over-carbonate the heck out of a future
Oh
down
man,
there.
we're going to do it. But the crazy thing is you drink it, you're like, wow, that is just, there's a bitterness in here that's just not expected. And then you give it 30 minutes at room temperature and that goes away. And it's that carbonic acid that is doing it for you. So adding a little too much CO2 at the beginning, you either get a lot of foam or you'll get overly carbonated beer. That can be better. Which is good for the future.
John, I can't answer your question on this live feed right now, but I got some good ones for you. Can you turn up the Mahalfa? Yeah, man, sorry. We just need more microphones. Jake's been asking for it for a while now. Jake wants lights. Jake wants mics. In due time, yes, we promise this production value will increase. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and shut this sucker down.
Let's plug some stuff.
Plug some stuff,
yeah.
Matt.
Follow us on Twitter at BeerMaker2.
No, it's at Maker Beer.
At
Beer
Maker
Beer.
Jake, come over and do
Yeah,
the socials.
Jake, we do
Jake, you have to do the socials. You know the mode that we
I don't know
do.
what that
Beer Maker is taken on Twitter.
Okay.
At Maker Beer on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Facebook,
TikTok,
no Snapchat.
TBD,
We're getting there.
Vine.
Vine doesn't exist anymore.
Dang it,
Really? What happened to Vine?
TikTok.
TikTok. Okay.
Don't harass BeerMaker on Twitter. He doesn't like us already. So, but it's his account. He's had it for a long time. So.
TikTok?
No,
That guy.
We made it like 2008.
he did. He got mad at us at one point. He's like, "Oh, you guys should change the name of your company because I've had this Twitter account for a while."
That's a good point. Yeah, so hit us on all these socials. Any questions, please
The
support at beermaker.com. Feel free to join. So far, we love the blog just because it's the Beer Maker Owners Group on Facebook. It's just happens to have the most people. But they have a lot of awesome stuff. So if you're floating around having fun with this thing, plug into that. We got more beers coming, we promise. Stout month is a lot of work, so we love that. And then after, yeah, we've got a nice lineup for the spring, leading into the summer. So otherwise, next, we're going to do another office hours in about a month or so. So if you have questions or content suggestions, please let us know. And see you next time. Bye, everyone.